If Donald Trump makes an endorsement in this Kentucky Senate primary race that's going on right now in the Republican Party, Nate Morris for sure will receive that endorsement. That's a bold statement to make. I know. You never know what's going to happen between now and then, but there was a game changer that happened in the race to replace McConnell that has a lot of ramifications that coupled with a lot of other things tells me that the chances that if Donald Trump makes an endorsement that Nate Morris isn't on that list, well, they're pretty small. And the chances that Andy Barr will be on that list are growing smaller based upon some rumors of articles that are coming out that they're not out already. Well, they should be by the time you're hearing this out regarding Andy Barr. So we'll be talking about that today. Also, of course, legislative sessions in session. Big changes coming to Kentucky's property tax. We are this close to forcing a vote on ending property tax for everyone, but fell a little short. So we'll talk about that as well. Additionally, a lot of other bills, a lot of things to discuss today. The Senate passed here last week a bill to ban phone use while driving. Does it go a little too far? We'll discuss that. There was a few no votes on that I think probably caught them by surprise. So they may make some changes or improvements to it, or maybe the House won't call it at all. So we'll be discussing all that and so much more today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. If you want to, if you're listening on radio and TV and you want to follow to the show, you don't want to miss an episode, well, you can do that simply by going ahead and heading over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. And you can hit the listen now tab, see all the places where you can listen to it. And as always, I hope you guys support sponsor of the show, Brewed Coffee. Visit brewed.store. Once again, that is brewed.store. Not only do they have fantastic coffees made right here in Kentucky, but also, I know the owner. He's a pretty swell guy, pretty handsome, I heard too. And also you can pick up some Andrew Cooperrider Show merch there. Here, I got a little cup, the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Nice little tumbler. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Everybody likes it. It's probably overpriced, but it's the cheapest it can be. So without further ado, let's dig down into it. So major game changer. And if you missed it, it's because you're living under a rock. Nate Morris has been endorsed by Elon Musk, and Musk has dropped $10 million behind Nate Morris. Now, why does this lead to me to make such a bold proclamation about Nate Morris's chances to get endorsed by Donald Trump? Now, I will say a caveat. There may be a chance Donald Trump doesn't endorse at all. There may be a chance that he endorses multiple people. But if he makes any endorsement at all, I think you got to say Nate Morris is going to get that nod. Let's look at the evidence, shall we? So first, you have Elon Musk dumping in $10 million. You have Donald Trump Jr. coming in behind Nate Morris. I don't know if he's officially endorsed him, but Nate Morris announced he was running on Donald Trump Jr.'s podcast and was on it several times. If he hasn't officially endorsed him, he's bound to. If he hasn't, obviously he's a big supporter of him. And then also Charlie Kirk. Nate Morris was Charlie Kirk's last endorsement before he unfortunately had his life ended through assassination. And there's recently some polling being sent out regarding how people feel about Erica Kirk, indicating chances are that the Nate Morris campaign was considering to take, maybe Erica Kirk made an offer to the Morris campaign to help out on that campaign, to help push him out there. And so they were trying to feel out the waters to see if that'd be helpful or hurtful, because, you know, they don't do anything without first considering it through the polls. That's just the way all campaigns work. So therefore, you're going to see, therefore it leads to the question, is Trump really going to go against Elon Musk, his son, Charlie Kirk, and now Erica Kirk? Is he really going to go against all of them and endorse somebody else that they're all behind when they're all behind Nate Morris? The chances of that happening are zero. Now, it might still be possible that either Daniel Cameron or Andy Barr get a nod as well. It depends on what the polls are saying. If it's pretty neck and neck, you may see one solitary endorsement. If, however, you see something like Nate Morris is polling in second, 10 points or 15 points or something like that behind Daniel Cameron, you might see Trump endorse both. But will Andy Barr get the nod if he's trailing behind? I don't know if he will. Because while he's done a lot of things to try to get in Trump's good graces, like proposing the $250 bill with Trump's face on it, that's the kind of thing Trump likes, of course, we know that. What we also have seen is, and if you haven't seen it, if it hasn't dropped yet, I've heard rumblings it will. There's an article coming out, or has come out by the time you listen to this, from the Herald Leader that supposedly is detailing how McConnell is backing Andy Barr. And then there is one person with horrible approval ratings here in Kentucky, and one person who Donald Trump certainly doesn't like from Kentucky, and that is Mitch McConnell. And so with that backing from Mitch McConnell, making it clear he's McConnell's guy, will Trump be willing to get in behind Barr? That is a lingering question. I also want to draw your attention to something else going on in the race regarding the betting polls. Obviously, there's a few stories I saw of people talking about how the betting polls, you got Closhy and, what else? You got Closhy and Polymarket. That's it. They are some of the future prediction betting markets where you can bet on the outcomes of things like elections. And there's been some interesting movement on it with Nate Morris getting a huge swell of support on there. Now, I say that with a super big caveat. I've seen some people referencing this too as well, just in posts and things like that. Here's a big caveat. Okay, so first, if we go over to Closhy. Closhy has Nate Morris as the highest chance of winning at 39%, then Andy Barr at 36%, Daniel Cameron at 25%. And the volume trading on this is $60,000. So there's people who play $60,000 worth of bets on this, okay? And what's interesting about this that I want to draw your attention to, if you can't see it, is Scott Jennings has a 3% chance of winning, which is why I'm a little hesitant to take any of these betting markets at face value, because the filing deadline has come and gone. Scott Jennings has absolutely 0% chance of becoming the winner of the Republican primary. 0%. Why? He didn't file to run. And you can't win the primary unless you file to run. The only chance Scott Jennings would have of becoming the Republican nominee is if somebody wins and then something unfortunate happens to them where they drop out, and then the party gets to come together and vote on a person to replace them. Then perhaps Scott Jennings could be that person, but chances are he won't be, because he didn't run for a reason, I would say. Now, granted, if you're the Republican, you're probably going to win. Kentucky hasn't voted for a Democrat senator since the 80s. So it's been, like 40 years, I think, ish, right around there, since we voted for a Democrat senator in Kentucky. So the Republicans most likely, obviously, to win. And then also when you look over at Polymarket, you see some interesting totals of who's up, who's down. Here it has Daniel Cameron at 41%, Nate Morris at 33%, Andy Barr at 26%, then Mike Ferris at 23% chance of winning. But the thing is, when you look at the trading volumes, you'd estimate it that only about $4,000 worth of betting has been placed. So if one individual is going for like a long shot payout, like take Michael Ferris, right? Where if you bought a share of Yes at, let's say, right now it's 45.3 cents. So if you buy a share of Yes at 45.3 cents, well, it's a long shot, but it may go up in value at some point, and then you can sell off. If you got somebody who has a low chance of winning, you place a $100 bet, and then you wait for that percentage to rise, and then you trade your shares of chances out, and you can make some money that way. And so that could be what's going on. But there's only $4,000 worth of trading there, but it has Daniel Cameron as the chance of winning. But what's interesting about both of them, both Closhie and Polymarket, and as I said, don't take them verbatim, is they both have Nate Morris making big moves over the past few days. So it's certainly been a game changer in that race. So when we come back, we'll be discussing big changes to Kentucky's property tax system. We'll have that when we come back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. See you in a few short minutes. Delicious. Oh, what's in here? Oh, well, what's in my tumbler here, the Andrew Cooperrider Show tumbler, available for sale at brewed.store, is 1776, a brewed coffee. A Kentucky proud product that's roasted right here in Kentucky, of course. You can pick yourself up a bag at brewed.store. Free shipping on orders over $85. And they're sold in per pound, both ground, whole bean, and K-cups. If you like your little K-cup machines, we have that for you too. And the best part is per pound, it's cheaper than most of the boutique freedom-loving coffees out there. And this one's made right here in your own backyard. I know that's fantastic. So pick yourself up. We've got 1776, a French roasted dark blend, which is historically funny because, of course, the French financed the revolution. And then also we have one of our other signature blends, Tyrant's Tears, a coffee that we meticulously harvest from famous tyrants like Annie Bashir, Pol Pot, and, of course, Mao. Additionally, we have other single origin coffees such as Cameroon Peaberry, Kenya, Peru. Fantastic, fantastic blends. Go ahead and pick yourself up a bag today. Not only will you be supporting the show, but also you'll be putting in your mouth a delicious and tasty black nectar called coffee. So order yours today. Brewed.store. Once again, it's BREWED.store. Brewed.store. Free shipping. Orders over $85. Pick yourself up a bag and pick yourself up one of these spiffy tumblers. Andrew Cooperrider Show tumbler today. Once again, that's brewed.store. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So big change has happened in the Senate to our property tax system. So they just passed a new constitutional amendment out of the Senate, so it's headed over to the House, which says that individuals over the age of 65 cannot have their ad valorem tax or their property tax, their real property tax, like your house property tax. The evaluation of the value of those items cannot increase. It can still decrease. So for some reason, the housing market takes a hit and it decreases. You can still have your value decreased, but it cannot increase after you turn 65. Now, before I talk about the protractors and the people for it and the arguments for and against, I do think it's worth mentioning that we were like this close to having an actual vote on ending property tax for everyone. See, Senator Jay Williams had filed an amendment to the bill to add in a question about ending property tax for everyone come 2028 and putting that on the ballot for people to decide on. Now, the Senate, I guess there was some issue about does it follow the rules of perhaps the Constitution, prior court rulings, and also the rules of the Senate of constitutional amendments have to be passed as one single question, not two questions, so on and so forth. However, we were still close to getting a vote on that. Now, talking about ending property tax from everyone, a common refrain I hear from people on it is, well, if we end property tax, then what do we fund things with? Because we've got to fund things locally. And I'll say my own solution for this has always been if the state, so understand, okay? According to our state constitution, localities, counties, and cities, they cannot, and some of you will disagree with this solution, but I think it's a relatively good solution that solves a few problems, especially for people out in more rural areas like eastern and western Kentucky. So right now, take eastern, western Kentucky, take counties that we would call bedroom communities. Property tax and insurance tax is like their only sources of revenue. You see, the Constitution currently limits localities from charging a sales tax. So all they can charge is like an income tax. They call it a occupational tax, but it's essentially an income tax. They can charge a property tax, and they can charge an insurance tax. And the problem becomes when you have bedroom communities. For those of you who don't know what that is, it means they live in a county, but maybe they don't work in that county. For example, you may like live in Estill County, but work in Madison County, Richmond. You may live in Harrison County, but work in Scott County, like you work at Toyota or something like that. And if that's the case, and there's not a lot of employers in the area, counties still, though, have to provide all those essential services to those homes, such as fire, police, water, trash in some areas, etc. And so they get a lot of their money from property tax. And so if you end property tax for all, because you're saying, look, it's your property, you own it, it shouldn't be taken away from you. You're not renting it from the government. You shouldn't be, at least. We have a right to property, and government shouldn't interfere with that. So I would argue that the idea of property tax might even be unconstitutional, though, of course, the founders didn't have as much issue with it as some would lead you to believe. But I would argue that, you know, the spirit of you owning your property is it shouldn't be taken away from you by the government without just compensation. So what do we replace it with? And this is where I would do, if I could wave a magic wand and somehow bundle 3 constitutional amendments together in one, or issues together. It's all taxation, so maybe you could include it all in one question. But I would end property tax, I would end income tax, and I would add local option sales tax. But then I would have the state come in and deduct what they're charging in tax, lower their rates, okay? Follow me. Right now, the state gets a lot of its revenue from sales tax. But what do they do with that revenue? Well, in large part, it's just redistributed back out to the counties. So the people that live, for an example, in Fayette County and are paying sales tax here and everything else, or in Louisville, or in Northern Kentucky, or a more populous county, are contributing to the state budget, while the counties that are less populous, that don't have as many jobs and can only make money from property tax, have a hard time making ends meet. And so therefore, the state redistributes the wealth out from the wealthier counties to the poorer counties so they can make ends meet. But if the state didn't have to do that as much, then they could lower their sales tax rate. That would be my argument. Allowing local option sales tax to come in and maybe pick it up. So if the state lowers its sales tax, let's say down to 4%, and then that allows local option sales tax to go to 4% themselves, you're paying 8%, or even if you go higher, let's say even it ends up being 5 and 5. That's a 10% sales tax. Would you be willing to pay a 10% sales tax to get rid of your property tax and all your income tax, local level and state? I would be. Maybe you're not, but I would be willing to do that. But see, it offers better options. That is a better tax for these less populated districts, because while you may work somewhere else, you still live there, and you're going to buy things there. You're going to buy things like, your items at your local stores, and that can contribute to the economy with jobs that otherwise right now they can't really make money off of because they're not as high paying as something like warehouses or factories. But what it also does is help out these counties really grab a hold of the tourism industry. The problem with the Eastern Kentucky counties is their best way, a lot of them, in order to generate funds and generate jobs, is tourism, because they don't have the infrastructure systems for like a big factory to come in there. And because they don't have the roads for the trucks, they don't have the sewer lines, the water lines, the power, whatever it may be. They just don't have it in that area. And so that's a big lift in order to get all that improved to allow this manufacturing to come in. So what they rely on instead, a lot of them, is tourism dollars is what they're angling for. But the problem is, when you don't have a local option sales tax, you can't really generate revenue off that tourism. It actually is kind of a net negative when you think about it, because you have to provide all these services to, let's say you have a tourism area, and in a given day, there's 5,000 people in your county, but only 2,000 of them or 3,000 of them actually live there. Well, you have to provide services to those other thousands like police, like fire, like ambulance, without actually having that much revenue coming off them, because the only revenue you make off of them is off the jobs created off tourism. And typically those jobs, restaurant, retail, they're not high-paying jobs. Would you rather have 10 retail jobs or 10 factory jobs? Every county right now would say I'd rather have 10 factory jobs. And so by allowing that local option sales tax, I believe you wouldn't need to redistribute the wealth from the counties. That would be my solution. That's my vision for what we would do with taxing. A lot of people critique me saying, well, you have all these thoughts about taxing and you have problems with this and that. Well, what's your solutions? How would you pay for things? One, I think a lot of what we do, we don't need to pay for first. Like a lot of the stuff we're doing, the government simply shouldn't be doing. And that's an exhaustive list. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just follow my social media. I talk about it all the time. But two, here's my solution. And it's kind of unique. It's kind of different. Offer some different opportunities. Maybe you disagree. Let me know. You can let me know. You can shoot me emails. info@theandrewshow.com. You can make comments down below if you're listening on social media and you disagree with that idea. But personally, I think it's a great idea. Plus, it moves your taxing even closer. Because if it's your fiscal court setting your sales tax, if it's your city council setting your sales tax, well, those are races that you have a lot of ability to change the outcome of. But regardless, they did go ahead and pass this property tax to freeze increases of evaluations for people over 65. Now, critiques of this from a lot of people is that, look, it's another handout to the boomers, right? And for those of you that say, look, senior citizens are struggling to get by, there are a lot of them struggling to get by. I hear you. But there is a factual matter when they talk about handouts to the boomers or, the wealthy people. I mean, just factually, statistically speaking, and this may not be the case in Kentucky. And look, I'm not somebody who looks in my cup and sees it's empty and then starts yelling that this guy next to me has got a full cup, right? So I don't want the government to tax everybody on their property tax. The idea that just this guy's going to get it and I'm not, or this guy's going to get a reduction and I'm not upset at that person for getting that reduction, to be clear. I want the same thing. I'm not saying take it away from this guy, but, just to be clear on what that argument is. But the statistical argument, and I understand people retired, fixed incomes, everything else. But when we look at the numbers, the wealthiest citizens that we have in the U.S., and therefore, you would probably say in Kentucky, are people over the age of like 55, 60. And that is actually progressing as further and further. So if you go back to the 1990s, the average millionaire was, I believe, 57 years old. The average millionaire, was 57 years old. Today, the average millionaire, or maybe they're 55. I think they're 55, 57, somewhere around there. Today, the average millionaire is 61 years old. Getting older and older, right? That means that it's skewing older. The older you get, the more wealth you have. And you do have families out here struggling to buy their first home. They've got kids. They want to provide for them. And geez, the difference between being able to buy your first home or not might be the fact that you don't have to pay a couple grand a year in property taxes, because that gets added on to, your mortgage. That's $200-$300 a month of your mortgage coming from property taxes in some places, some situations. And so I understand those arguments against it, but I'm not going to sit here and rail against this move because I don't want anybody to pay property tax. Just my opinion. Well, coming up after this, we'll talk about Senate Bill 28 passes out of the Senate as well. We might also be discussing Ed Gallrein, running in the 4th District, drops his first ad. That's at Massie congressional race. We'll be talking about that when we get back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Do you hear that? I do. It's Bashir crying. Why? Because you're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And I thought to myself, why should we let those tears go to waste? Like any good capitalist, I said, that is a resource that can be sold. So we capture those tears from Andy Bashir and other famous tyrants like Pol Pot, Mao, whoever else. And we collect them up and we put them into a delicious coffee called Tyrant's Tears, available at brood.store. Once again, that's brood.store. You can pick yourself up a spiffy Andrew Cooperrider Show tumbler while you're at it and get yourself a nice bag. Free shipping on orders over $85. We have Tyrant's Tears in 1776, our signature blends. We also have flavored coffees such as Swiss chocolate and bourbon for those of you that want a little kick without the buzz from, well, alcohol. You'll get the buzz from the caffeine, though. Check out today. Brood.store. This is a Kentucky Proud product, roasted right in your own backyard. Brood.store. Support the show. It's cheaper per pound than most of those other boutique coffees. And it's available whole bean, ground, K-Cups. However you make your coffee, we got you covered. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So, House Bill 28 leaves the Senate, gets voted for. What's that bill do? For those of you who don't remember, House Bill 28 is a new and improved cell phone law. So it's already illegal to text and drive in Kentucky. What this would add is that it's illegal to touch your phone at all, period. For it to be like literally on your body at all. And to give you an example of why there's a few senators that vote against this, and why I take issue with this bill, I want to play this little exchange here between the two senators. There's the one sponsoring it, which is Higdon, I believe, and Senator, was it Smith, right? Yeah, Senator Smith. And so they have a little question. He asked him a question on it, and I think it's definitely worth talking about. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
One of the concerns I'm getting back from some of the people in my district are if they're traveling through, say, an area that's got surveillance, if they could come back and add that as a secondary violation. So say I'm driving and I've got my GPS or my phone maybe on my leg and they get me for speeding, but then they can look inside my window and see that my device is there, and then do an additional ticket on top of that. I mean, it may not be the case at all, but that's one of the questions, Mr. President, that I was asked.
Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd be glad to answer that question.
Please proceed.
I'm going to read from the bill itself. A police officer shall not stop a person for a violation of this section unless the officer has visually observed that a violation has occurred based on the officer's clear and unobstructed view of a person who is unlawfully using a mobile electronic device while operating a vehicle on a public highways of the Commonwealth. So they had to have an unobstructed visual of that person using the phone, which is a very, very high standard.
Senator from Perry, you have further need.
Yeah, Mr. President, just to kind of follow up, I think the visual is probably what is causing a little bit of, I guess, questions for me at home, and is that you could see if I trigger an area that's surveillance, a camera, say a tunnel, and they say I'm speeding, they could visually at that point see inside. Those things are very, high resolution detail, but you could see inside. And see at that point, the officer could see that I would have a device. It could just be a GPS or anything in my lap. But I guess in that case, he is visually seeing it. He's just seeing it through a digital format. So it would follow to say that they did see me. They triggered it through the camera because I was going too fast. But then he could see, and I would have an additional charge on it. So I understand what you're saying about visually being able to see. These offenses, and I'm doing a terrible job, I know, would be after the fact. Could a ticket be added after the fact if the officer visually sees that I have some device that would be in my lap? Whether it's on or off or warranted or not, I think that was their concern, that they may have something there, and that visual part, it would be visual on a digital camera, even though I was only triggering it for speeding. And if you guys can help me here, if anybody's got a better way, I'm sure you're getting some of the questions as well. But that's my question, if that would not apply, I guess, to this, or it would apply.
Any other members seeking recognition for the purpose of question or discussion?
So there you go. So one is, that should give you an example why it goes too far. Because his question was, what if they have their phone running GPS and it's on their lap, and then there's like a camera that's able to look down in the windshield because of these like traffic cameras, or they're checking your plate for paying a toll or anything else, and then they see that you have a phone in your lap navigating. Well, you get a ticket for that. And I think there's a lot of issues here, okay? And also I think that explains like a giant loophole in it, right? Follow me here. Okay, so let's pretend you're using your phone to navigate, which factually is something everybody does. You could pass a law saying, don't navigate. I don't know exactly what your fix for that would be as an individual to say, hey, look, you can't use your phone to navigate, right? Because GPSs have been a thing for quite some time. I think that's unrealistic. And I think if you're going to say, no, just pull over if you need to navigate, that's unrealistic too. I mean, a lot of times you're going on a highway, there's a lot of lanes, you're in a new area, you're trying to figure out which lane to take. That's unrealistic. Say, just pull over to navigate. No, that's not going to happen. And so right now, if you're navigating, you could legally hold on to your steering wheel with both hands, keeping your eyes forward, and then you have your phone kind of held in your other hand as you're driving, and you're able to like look over and reference it for GPS. Because the big change here is that they could only cite you for texting and driving, but if you're doing something like I'm describing, holding your steering wheel with both hands, and you just have your phone held in your hand off to the side, like against the steering wheel, so you can see where you're to change to, well, then that was legal. So we want to make that illegal. Unless, of course, you have it in a holder. Okay, so just imagine this. What is actually safer? A phone in your hand while you're holding your steering wheel and you're able to see it while you're looking forward, or a phone in a holder, because it doesn't say the holder has to be here or there or anywhere. A phone that's in a holder that if it's like an air vent holder, for an example, common type of holder, because you don't want to obstruct your windshield a lot of times. I know I don't do that. And so you have it on a vent holder, and it's off to your right side. You're doing like a full quarter head turn. You're literally taking your eyes off the road to fully turn your neck now to look at it. Sometimes turn and look down even, depending on if it's, a truck and you're up in the air or whatever your seat settings are. Because it's not safe. He didn't chime in and say, no. If you have your phone on your lap while you're navigating, that's legal. It's just holding it while you're driving that's illegal. So you can't have your phone navigating you unless it's in a holder that is forcing you to take your eyes off the road to look at. But then he actually said, well, in that case, that's what he said. He said, in that case, if the phone's down in your lap, they'd have to unobstructed view of it, and so they wouldn't be able to see that. And so what they made illegal, was what I described, holding the wheel while driving and you got your phone off to the side. Illegal. What is legal, though, is full on putting your phone in your lap because a cop can't see it and looking down, full on looking down at your lap while you're driving, probably in traffic, because let's call a spade, right? Most of the time, if you don't need to see navigation, you're probably on a stretch of highway that's not very densely populated, and so you don't need to look to see where you're going. You don't need to take your eyes off the road ever at all in that situation to look at your phone, see where you're going. So you have people in busy traffic, most likely, merge points trying to find their lanes, and the only way they can legally use their phone to navigate. And if you think you've got bad drivers now, imagine how bad of a driver you're going to get if they can't even know where they're going. So not only does the bill outlaw things that aren't really the big problem, it goes too far. The problem is texting and driving. We already have a law against it. Okay? Enforce it. But it goes so far that it actually makes what you need to do to get away with using your phone even just to navigate is either unsafe or unsafe. The safest option you can't do. And so it's just a dumb bill. It's a dumb bill for that. It doesn't, and also on top of that, you have a lot of reasons people take their eyes off the road. They're talking to people next to them. They're eating while driving. They're looking all around. And they're talking to somebody in the back, looking in their rearview mirror at their kids. Distracted driving is absolutely a huge problem on the road. But this doesn't solve a lot of it. And it goes so far that, it, like I said, it makes the roads unsafe. When we get back, we'll be discussing Ed Gallrein, Thomas Massie race. We'll return to that discussion. Also hearing some rumblings of a few other bills like dealing with driver's licensing. We'll have that when we get back here on the next segment of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, final segment here. So I started out talking about the Senate race. That's heating up. But now we have the 4th Congressional District race heating up. There's a few people filed, but the main horses in this race are, of course, the incumbent, Thomas Massie, running against Ed Gallrein. And Ed rolled out his first ad, introducing him to everybody, kind of getting his, name out there. Let's take a watch and see what they have here.
News. He's President Donald Trump's hand-picked choice. Retired Navy SEAL officer Ed Gallrein gaining Donald Trump's endorsement.
President Trump knows who to trust. Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, and 5th-generation Kentucky farmer Captain Ed Gallrein. A true America First patriot. Trump knows Captain Ed Gallrein is a winner who will not let you down. That's why Trump gives Ed Gallrein his complete and total endorsement.
I'm Ed Gallrein, and I approve this message.
So there you go. There's the ad. I'll say this. I'm not going to sit here and say, it's not a bad, I would call it not a bad, mid-campaign ad, right? Just reminding people I exist, I'm endorsed by Trump, everything else. As a first ad, it really doesn't tell us much. And considering he does have millions of dollars, it is interesting to see the quality of advertisement that comes out of millions of dollars. Like I said, it's an okay, mid-range ad. It's the kind of ad you'd cut to be like, okay, let's just stay at the forefront of people's minds. Let's get it going. But you think of primary introductory ad would tell us things like family, obviously he talked about his military background, but maybe talk a tiny bit about what he wants to do. He mentioned that Trump endorsed him. He mentioned that he was, a Navy SEAL and a Army Ranger, but he didn't mention I'm going to fight for something else. The other thing I think, and a kind of a cardinal sin, I think, is when you do your introductory ad, you're introducing a candidate for the first time in this campaign, I think it should be the candidate talking too. I don't think it should be a voiceover because a lot of people don't know the candidate and they're there's something that comes across as more genuine when they are actually speaking, when they're actually talking, right? And I just think that's kind of like a cardinal sin, I guess you could say, or something to miss out on. But, like I said, it's an okay ad. I really don't know. And I think it speaks to the electorate right now a little bit. That maybe I care a lot about politics. Clearly, I talk about it all the time, especially state politics. I care a lot about things going on within my state, happening in my own backyard. Important to me. So I like to know, what do candidates stand for? What do they mean? What do they want to see different? What do they like? What's going on? That actually really helps me evaluate if I want to vote for somebody or not. But, I don't know if a lot of voters feel that way. I mean, for an example, okay. Let's talk about the 3 candidates that are polling the highest in the Senate race. So you have Daniel Cameron. So go to Daniel Cameron's website, okay? Daniel Cameron's website is Cameron for Kentucky, right? So we go to Cameron for Kentucky. What do we see? We see starts off with join the team, donate, store. You scroll down, a few quotes from him. It says, Daniel Cameron is the America First candidate in this race. grow, and then it's got a few things listed off: grow Kentucky jobs, deport criminals, protect our Second Amendment. So they kind of highlight. They don't click. I guess you could click read more. Let's try read more. And it's a sparse outline. Like there's like 3 bullet points. So for example, economic and job growth. As Kentucky's next senator, Daniel Cameron will fight alongside President Trump to cut taxes, unleash American energy, and get rid of needless government red tape to spur job growth in manufacturing, agriculture, and small business across Kentucky. Bring manufacturing jobs back to Kentucky, put more money in Kentuckians' pocket, support trade deals that benefit American workers. That's it. That's all he has for economic growth, okay? And it leads to questions like, what exact policies, what exact regulations, what is killing Kentucky specifically? What do you believe needs to go away specifically in Kentucky? But I'm not picking on Daniel Cameron, because if you go to Andy Barr's website, it doesn't show up first. Let me search Andy Barr for Senate website. There you go. Nope, that's his house. That's his Facebook. That's his Wikipedia. That's his house. House. Is it Andy Barr for Senate? That's articles. Uh-oh. Why can't I find this? That's a problem. Andy Barr's team, if you're listening, the fact that I just searched Andy Barr for Senate website and I can't find it is a concern. Okay, let me go to his Facebook page and see if I can just find. Here we go. It's barforsenate.com. There we go. Barforsenate.com, you see, opens up still with a join the team, whatever. It's got a Meet Andy page where it talks about his congressional background and history and what he, basically Eddie's family man. Go to issues. His top issue, close the border, deport illegals. Okay. What did it say? Andy Barr believes we must deport all illegals and close the border, and he's been champion for border protection, supporting Trump, secure the border. He's fought the way, co-sponsor and vote for the Secure Order Act that solidifies Trump border policies and in federal laws, such as restarting border wall construction, funding to hire more border agents, reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, ending catch and release. This is Barr for Senate. Yeah. Well, these things have all done. I guess he's saying that he wants. A lot of these things have already. He's saying they already happened. Yeah. Okay. So he's saying that was in the bill. So he doesn't say, like, for an example, they're talking about issues. So he doesn't even say, like, what he's going to do in the future on that issue. What else is he going to do? Just talk about what he already did. So it really doesn't give you a whole lot. Now, Andy Barr he's got something called Kentucky's Coal Plan, which is pretty in-depth and actually goes into like what exactly he'll do on coal. That's good. But I'd like to see a little bit more in depth on the other issues, of course, outside of coal. And then if you go to Nate Morris for Senate website, I'm finding these all the same way. I'm just Googling Nate Morris for Senate. Oh, here you go. Top of the line. Morris for Senate. See, that's like proper. Of course, it starts off with join the fight, donate, page, good stuff. All fine. It's time to take out the trash. He's got his video. Taking on waste, talks about his background. And then he's got just bullet points. And that's it. It's like one page, right? Like, that's the way these are campaigns with millions of dollars. This is the way campaign websites are now. They are short on exactly their issues and the exact policies. What specifically are they going to do? So maybe it's not interesting. One thing I will say, I read this article where I got this video from Courier Journal, the Ed Gallrein ad from the Courier Journal article. And at the top, they had a different video. And I thought it was going to be Ed Gallrein's ad, but it's actually this video of Massie that actually kind of makes him look good to me. I don't know, but here, take a listen.
When I was talking to him after the election about cabinet positions, because there was some discussion of me doing the ag secretary job, and I was talking to Trump about it, and he asked me about Bobby Kennedy and said, "What about Bobby? Is he too much? Is he too much for HHS?" And they said, "What do you mean, is he too much?" He said, "Don't you think we need some vaccines?" And I said, "Well, I don't think he wants to ban all the vaccines. And by the way, you can put the wildest horse you can find at the top of any of these agencies. And in 4 years, they're only going to change it maybe 1 or 3%. The bureaucrats are so entrenched. And he said, do you know Bobby? And I said, yes. He said, are you friends with Bobby? And I said, yes. He said, call him up. Tell him to get ready. So I got off the phone with Trump. I told Bobby Kennedy, I called him up immediately, and I said, number one, I got good news and bad news. He said, well, what's the good news or the bad news? And I said, well, Trump thinks you want to ban all the vaccines. He goes, I never said that. and then he said, what's the good news? I said, I think if you clear this up, I think he's going to pick you for HHS secretary. The next day, he picked Bobby Kennedy for HHS secretary.
So yeah, it's weird that they had that article, and then the top video was that. And it wasn't until you scrolled down that you got to Ed Gallrein. I don't know. I think it unintentionally helped out Massie. But anyways, well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Till next time, we'll be seeing you.